I'm Livia, and until 2 days ago, my life was made of flowers, the sweet scent of roses, the delicate touch of petals, the chime of the little bell at the flower shop I inherited from my grandmother ringing every time a customer walked in. It was simple, almost suffocatingly predictable. But it was mine. That is, until my uncle showed up at the shop's door, his eyes red from sleepless nights and his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "You're going to save me, Livia," he said, his voice shaky. "It's just a deal, a marriage, and my debts disappear." I thought it was a delusion, a bad joke. But then he handed me an envelope with a contract, my name in cold letters and a sum that turned my stomach. I wasn't my own anymore. I'd been sold like merchandise to settle a debt that was never mine. The man who bought me is Chio Valente. At 32, he's a millionaire whose presence fills the city's dark alleys with whispers. Tall, broad-shouldered, black hair falling over his forehead in a way that seems deliberate, but his eyes, his gray eyes, cut like steel blades. He runs businesses no one dares question, and his name is synonymous with power and secrets. I'd never seen him before, but I trembled just hearing his name. My uncle said Kyo agreed to the deal without hesitation, with a cold smile, as if I were a necessary inconvenience. He wants a wife to show off, my uncle explained, as if that justified everything. But I know it's more than that. In Kyo's eyes, there's something else, a dark promise. He plans to shape me into his world. Before we begin, a quick note. This video is a work of fiction intended for mature audiences. It contains suggestive themes and passionate storytelling designed for entertainment purposes only. There is no explicit content, violence, or real events depicted here. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're ready for a thrilling romantic tale, sit back and enjoy. Now here I am. His mansion is a labyrinth of marble and shadows, so vast that the echo of my footsteps seems to chase me. I was taken straight to a room on the second floor, where a hollow-eyed maid handed me a white dress, simple but tight, with a neckline that made me blush just imagining wearing it. "He wants you ready in an hour," she said before leaving and locking the door. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. The room was luxurious, with a huge bed draped in black silk sheets, a full-length mirror reflecting my pale, frightened face, and a window overlooking a dark, impenetrable garden. There was no escape. I was trapped. I dressed with trembling hands, the fabric clinging to my skin like a second layer of shame. The clock on the wall ticked mercilessly. I knew he'd come. Chio Valente wasn't the kind of man who waited. He took what he wanted. And then the door opened. He strode in as if the room already belonged to him. As if I already did. He wore an impeccable black suit, the collar open to reveal a glimpse of his tanned chest, his hands in his pockets, casual yet brimming with authority. His eyes locked onto me instantly. I froze. He said nothing at first, just stared, his head slightly tilted like a predator sizing up its prey. The air grew heavier with him there, charged with something I couldn't name. Fear, yes. But also something more. Something hot and treacherous that rose in my chest and faltered my breath. "So it's you," he finally said, his voice deep like distant thunder, each syllable slicing through the silence. He took a step forward. I instinctively stepped back until my back hit the cold wall. The corner of his mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The florist my money bought." I think I expected something more, sophisticated. The contempt in his words stung like a slap. But I couldn't reply. My throat was dry, my mind spinning for an escape that didn't exist. He came closer, the heat of his body invading the space between us. "Think you can fool me with that innocent little face?" he asked, leaning in until I could smell the woody scent of his cologne mixed with something more dangerous, raw power. His fingers brushed my arm. A firm, almost possessive touch that set my skin ablaze where they lingered. My heart raced, a mix of panic and a feeling I didn't want to name. "Let's see how long that mask holds," he whispered, his gray eyes dissecting me as if he could see right through me. I wanted to scream, run, hit him, anything to break the control he had over the air around me. But my body wouldn't obey. My knees shook, and my breath came in shallow gasps I couldn't stifle. He thought I was a gold digger. A scheming girl who dreamed of his wealth. That's what the contract said. What my uncle likely made up to seal the deal. But he was wrong. I didn't want any of this. I never asked for it. Yet here I was, caught in the web of a man who looked at me like he'd already decided my fate. "You'll dine with me tomorrow," he said, straightening up and stepping back as if nothing had happened. "And you'll learn to behave like my wife." He turned and walked to the door. But before leaving, he glanced over his shoulder. "Sleep well, Livia. You'll need it." The door clicked shut. I collapsed to the floor, my legs giving out under the weight of fear and confusion. My arm still burned where he touched me, and I hated the flush creeping up my neck. Who was this man? And why, despite all the dread he inspired, did a part of me wonder what would happen if I stopped resisting? The next day passed in a blur. I barely slept, the black silk sheets of his bed, or rather, the prison he'd given me, sticking to my sweaty skin as I tossed and turned. The memory of Kyo Valente's gray eyes haunted me, piercing and unyielding. And that touch on my arm still lingered. An invisible mark I couldn't erase. When the clock struck 6, the same hollow-eyed maid knocked on the door. "Dinner now," she said, leaving a pair of black heels and a dark red dress on the chair. "He doesn't like delays." I dressed with shaky fingers. The fabric hugged my curves in a way that made me feel exposed. Vulnerable. The neckline was subtle, but the way the cloth clung to my hips screamed something I didn't want to say. I descended the mansion stairs with my heart in my throat, my heels echoing on the marble like a warning. The dining room was vast, lit by a crystal chandelier casting dancing shadows on the walls. At the center, a long dark wood table. And there he was. Kyo. Seated at the head, a glass of whiskey in hand, his eyes on me before I even crossed the threshold. "You're late," he said, his voice low but laced with an authority that tightened my stomach. He didn't rise. Just gestured lazily to the chair beside him. "Sit, Livia. Let's begin." I obeyed. Because there was no choice. The smell of the food, roast meat, fresh herbs, something that should have been comforting, couldn't mask the weight of his presence. He watched me as I tried to keep my hands steady in my lap. The fork lay untouched on my plate. "Not eating?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or are you waiting for me to feed you?" His tone was taunting. Cruel. Heat rushed to my face. "I'm not hungry," I murmured, my voice weaker than I wanted. He laughed. A sharp, short sound that cut the air. A poorly told lie. "You're nervous, I can see it from here." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, the whiskey glass twirling between his long fingers. "What do you want, huh? Tell me. Want me to believe you stumbled into my life by accident? That this scared little face is real?" His eyes pinned me. I felt like he was peeling me apart with every word. "I didn't ask for this," I replied, finally finding a thread of courage. "It was my uncle, he sold me a story." Kyo cut in, the smile vanishing. "Said you were clever, ambitious. That you dreamed of a man like me. But here you are, trembling like a leaf. So either you're a better actress than I thought, or he lied to me." He rose from his chair, the movement so fluid I barely noticed until he was beside me. So close I could feel the heat off his shoulder. "Get up," he ordered, his voice firm. I hesitated, but the weight of his gaze forced me to comply. I stood, the dark red dress brushing my legs. He stepped closer, shrinking the distance until I had to tilt my head to meet his eyes. "Let's test that innocence of yours," he said. Before I could react, his finger slid along my arm, up to my shoulder, tracing a slow, deliberate line that made my skin tingle. "Stop," I whispered, but my voice came out weak, almost a plea. He smirked, that cold smile promising trouble. "Why? Afraid of what I might do, or what you might want?" He leaned in, his face inches from mine. I felt the warmth of his breath against my neck. You're mine now, Olia. The sooner you accept that, the easier it'll be. His fingers tightened on my shoulder, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind me who held the power. I wanted to push him. Scream. Run. Anything to snap the invisible chain he was wrapping around me. But my body wouldn't listen. My heart pounded wildly, and a wave of heat surged through my chest, betraying every rational thought I clung to. He was dangerous. Manipulative. Everything I feared. And yet, that touch, that closeness, sparked something I'd never felt. A confusing, forbidden pleasure that made me hate myself. You like playing with me, don't you? I managed to say, the words sharper than I'd intended. He blinked, caught off guard for a moment before the smirk returned, darker this time. I like testing limits, he replied, his hand sliding from my shoulder to the base of my neck, fingers grazing my collarbone. And yours are breaking faster than I expected. I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could, a noise came from the dining room's entrance. Heavy footsteps. A man's voice calling his name. Kyo pulled back, his face hardening as he glanced at the door. Stay here, he said, the tone slicing through me. Then he strode out without giving me a chance to reply. I sank back into the chair, legs wobbly, heart racing. My arm burned where he touched me, and I rubbed the skin as if I could erase the sensation. Who was this man? He infuriated me. Scared me. Suffocated me with every word. But my body acted like I was someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. And now with him out of the room, I knew something had shifted. The dinner wasn't over. He'd be back. And somehow, being that close to him again was the last thing I wanted. And the only thing I couldn't stop picturing. The minutes dragged on after Kyo left the dining room, leaving me alone with the echo of my own thoughts. The sound of his footsteps and that unfamiliar male voice faded down the hall, but the tension he'd left behind still pressed down on me. I could feel the ghost of his touch on my neck, warm and insistent. The dark red dress felt tighter than ever, as if it were conspiring to keep me trapped in that chair. I didn't know what was happening out there, but I knew he'd return. Kyo Valente wasn't a man to leave loose ends. And I was a loose end he seemed determined to tie up. When the door swung open again, my whole body tensed. He stepped in alone, his face a mask of stone. But there was something new in his eyes, a spark I couldn't decipher. He didn't return to the head of the table. Instead, he stopped a few feet from me, hands in his pockets, staring at me like I was a puzzle he needed to solve. Get up, he said, his voice quieter than before, but laced with an urgency that made me obey before I could think. I stood, legs shaky, heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. What now? I asked, trying to sound steady, but my voice came out fragile, nearly swallowed by the room's silence. He took a step closer, cutting the distance until I could feel his heat again. You told me you didn't ask for this, he began, his gray eyes locked on mine, unrelenting. That your uncle made it all up. That you're not the gold digger he sold me. He tilted his head, the corner of his mouth twitching into a smile that held no humor. But I don't believe in coincidences, Livia. So tell me the truth, what's your game? I don't have a game. The words burst out before I could hold them back, fueled by an anger I didn't even know I'd been harboring. You think I wanted to be here? That I dreamed of being sold like an object to a man like you? I don't even know what you want from me. He laughed. A short, cutting sound that made me flinch. What I want? He closed the gap until I could smell the whiskey on his breath, mixed with that woody cologne that seemed part of him. I want a wife who knows her place. Who understands what it means to carry my name. His fingers brushed my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. But you challenge me with that look. You tease me with this innocent act. And I want to know how far it goes. I swallowed hard, his touch searing my skin, but the anger still pulsed inside me. You don't know me, I said, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. You think I'm experienced? That I planned every step of this? But I've never. My voice broke. I bit my lip, trying to hold the words back. But they came anyway. A trembling whisper that changed everything. I've never been with anyone. This marriage, it's my prison, not my ambition. The silence that followed was deafening. His hand froze on my chin, fingers stiff. His eyes widened, for a split second, a crack in the control I never thought I'd see in Valente. He blinked, his face hardening as he processed what I'd said. What? The word came out low. Almost a growl. Like he couldn't believe his ears. I'm a virgin, I repeated, the tears finally spilling, trailing hot down my cheeks. I don't know what you expected from me, but I'm not what you think. I never wanted this. I never wanted you. He stepped back, his hand dropping to his side. For a moment, something flickered across his face, shock, doubt, maybe even a hint of guilt. But then his eyes narrowed. He stared at me like I was an impossible riddle. A piece that didn't fit the board he'd set up. You're lying, he said. But there was a waver in his voice. A fracture in the armor he wore so well. Why would I lie about that? I shot back, wiping my face with the back of my hand. You already have me here. You've already won. He stood silent, eyes fixed on me, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. Valente, the cold millionaire who controlled everything and everyone, was wrong. He thought I was a social climber, a seasoned woman who knew how to play his game. But I was the opposite. A naive florist, untouched, thrown into a world I didn't understand. And now, he didn't know what to do with me. He started, then stopped, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that felt almost human. Almost vulnerable. Then he turned, stalking to the window, his back rigid as he stared out at the dark garden. Get out, he said finally, his voice rough. Go back to your room. I didn't wait for him to change his mind. I ran to the door, the red dress rustling behind me. But before I left, I glanced back at him. He still faced away, fists clenched, and I knew something had shifted. He didn't see me as an easy trophy or a submissive wife to parade anymore. I'd thrown him off, and it was eating at him. Lying in bed that night, I trembled under the sheets. But it wasn't just from fear. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of power, not over him, but over myself. And as I listened to the mansion's silence, a certainty grew in me. Valente might be dangerous, but he wasn't as in control as he thought. And that, I knew, was just the beginning. The days after my confession at dinner became a game of shadows and silence. Valente avoided me, but I felt his gaze in every corner of the mansion. A predator circling, unable to stay away. The revelation of my virginity had disarmed him. And I knew he was wrestling with something he couldn't grasp. I was an enigma. Prey he wanted to master. But one that was mastering him back. And that night, the tension erupted. I was in the bedroom, moonlight filtering through the curtains, when the door opened with a snap. He stepped in, black suit unbuttoned, hair tousled as if he'd battled himself before coming. His eyes found me, blazing with a mix of desire and desperation that set my whole body humming. Get up, he commanded, his voice husky, a thread of urgency slicing the air. I obeyed, the light cotton pajamas feeling flimsy against the storm he brought with him. He crossed the room in 3 firm strides, stopping inches from me. You've ruined me, he whispered, his fingers grazing my face, sliding down my neck in a caress that ignited my skin. I try to ignore you, but you're inside me. Before I could answer, he yanked me by the waist, pressing my body to his. His heat enveloped me, his firm chest against mine, and I clutched his shirt, fingers trembling on the fabric. Take it off, he said, eyes darkening as he tugged at my pajama strap. I hesitated, heart racing. But the hunger in his gaze undid me. I let the fabric slip, pooling at my feet, and the cool air brushed my bare skin as he devoured me with his eyes. Perfect, he murmured, dropping to his knees before me. Strong hands gripped my thighs. His lips grazed my hip, slow and hot, tracing a path that made my legs buckle. "You're mine, Livia," he said, his deep voice vibrating against my skin. "And I'll make you feel it." I tried to stay still, a statue against his hurricane. But my body betrayed me. His hands climbed, fingers tracing torturous circles on the insides of my thighs, inching up to where heat already pulsed, begging for him. "Kyo," I moaned, the sound slipping out unbidden. He smirked, a wild glint in his eyes as he lifted me effortlessly, carrying me to the bed like a prize he'd never let go of. Laid out on the black sheets, I watched him strip. The shirt fell, revealing a chiseled chest, muscles shifting under bronzed skin as he shed each piece with a calm that clashed with the starvation in his stare. He climbed over me, his weight pinning me. His lips crashed into mine in a ravenous kiss, his tongue claiming my mouth with a possession that had me arching into him. "You'll feel me in every inch of you," he whispered, teeth grazing my neck as he moved lower. His hot lips closed over my chest, sucking with a pressure that pulled a muffled cry from me. His hands roamed, firm and skilled, sliding down my stomach, between my thighs, where he found the heart of my longing. His fingers moved in slow, low, then faster circles, driving me to an ecstasy I'd never imagined. "That's it," he murmured, eyes locked on mine as I writhed beneath him. "Give in to me." And I did. Waves of pleasure crashed through me, my moans filling the room as he guided me down a path of fire and light. Then he aligned himself, his body flush with mine, and took me with a force that was both wild and reverent. Each thrust was deep, intense. His hips slammed into mine in a rhythm that had me clutching him, nails digging into his back. "You're mine," he repeated, voice ragged as he pushed me higher. Pleasure burst through me like fireworks, over and over. I lost myself in him, the world shrinking to the heat of his skin, the sound of our gasps, the ecstasy binding us. When he finally collapsed beside me, breathless, he pulled me against his chest, fingers lacing through mine in a gesture more intimate than all that came before. He said nothing. But I felt it. His heart pounding wildly. The tremor in his hands. Kyo Valente was trapped. Lost in me. And I knew, he wouldn't let me go. The next morning, he brought coffee. His eyes tracked my every move as I sipped, like I was a treasure he needed to guard. "Stay here today," he said, voice firm but edged with softness. "I want you close." It was a command. But also a need. And I saw the signs. The book he left on the nightstand. The flower snatched from the garden on the tray. The look that said more than his words ever would. He'd leave. And return. More ensnared each time. And I realized. The man who bought me, now worshipped me. His touches laced with devotion. He wouldn't admit I held him as much as he held me. And in that room, amid black sheets and silent promises, we both fell into each other's traps. The days in the mansion turned into a dangerous dance of closeness and quiet. After that night, when Kyo claimed me with a passion that branded me, he couldn't stay away. His touches were constant, a brush of fingers on my arm as I read, a gaze that stripped me bare. Even through clothes, I felt his power over me, but also mine over him, growing like a flame I didn't know how to tame. My body wasn't just mine anymore. One look from him, and I'd ignite, surrendering to a desire I never thought I'd carry. That night, though, everything shattered. I was in the garden, the cool night air easing the heat consuming me when voices drifted from the veranda. It was Kyo and a man I didn't know, but his tone, sharp, almost frantic, made me freeze. "She's not what you think," the man said, laughing. "Your uncle lied, Valente. She's a trap after your money." My heart sank. A misunderstanding. A seed of doubt sown by someone bent on tearing us apart. Before I could explain, Kyo stormed into the garden like a tempest, his eyes dark with fury. "Is it true?" he demanded, grabbing my shoulders, fingers digging in tight. "Have you been playing me this whole time?" The pain in his voice cut deeper than his grip. I shook my head, tears streaming, but he released me like I burned him and turned away, vanishing into the mansion's shadows. For hours, he was gone. I stayed in the bedroom, the silence choking me, the fear of losing him, yes, losing him, eating me alive. When the door finally creaked open, there he was, hair wild, eyes red from sleeplessness. I almost believed it, he murmured, dropping to his knees before me. Almost let you go. His voice cracked, and I saw the torment he carried. The dread of betrayal. The terror of losing me. I'm yours, I whispered, the words spilling out before I could stop them. It was true. I didn't want to run anymore. He looked up, stunned, then pulled me to him, his lips crashing into mine in a starving, desperate kiss, full of relief and need. Then show me, he breathed against my mouth, hands already sliding under my shirt, yanking it off with an urgency that set me trembling. I gave in like never before. He lifted me, carrying me to the bed with a strength that was both possessive and frantic. Take it all off, he whispered, eyes blazing as he watched me shed every layer, slow and deliberate, the air between us thick with want. When I stood bare before him, he dragged me down, lips blazing a trail down my neck, across my chest, each kiss stoking a fire that had me arching into him. You're mine, he murmured, his skilled hands mapping every curve, every sensitive spot, with a precision that stole my breath. I didn't fight it anymore. I opened to him, moans slipping free as his fingers traced slow, tortuous circles, pushing me to the edge of bliss. He stripped fast, his strong body pressing into mine. And when he took me, it was with a passion beyond possession. Each thrust was deep, consuming, our bodies moving as one. The pleasure surged in waves that had me clinging to him, nails raking his back as I drowned in him. He guided me, whispering my name like a prayer. And I answered, giving myself fully, the desire swallowing us until the world beyond faded. When the climax hit, it was overwhelming. I shook beneath him, and he collapsed over me, panting, his lips seeking mine in soft, almost worshipful kisses. I can't live without you, he admitted, voice low, fingers threading through mine. The cold millionaire was broken, a man in love, who'd fought himself and lost. He held me close, locking me against his chest, and I knew, he was mine as much as I was his. The morning after that night brought a stillness I never thought I'd feel in Valente's mansion. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, gilding the black sheets where we lay tangled, our bodies still warm from the night's surrender. He held me like I might vanish, fingers tracing soft circles on my back. But then he pulled away, rising from the bed with a resolve that stole my breath. Kyo dropped to his knees beside me, his gray eyes shimmering with something raw, unguarded. I was a fool, he said, voice steady despite the shake in the hands that clasped mine. I thought I could shape you, own you, but you've changed me. I love you, Livia. And I want you with me, not because of a contract, but because you choose it. A shy, genuine smile broke through, the cold millionaire now a man laid bare. I leaned in, kissing him with a tenderness that sealed it all. Fear. Desire. Love. I love you too, I whispered. And he pulled me into his arms, lips meeting mine in a silent vow. In that embrace, we were one. Free. Whole. Forever.